everybody. Welcome back. It is the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. I'm Steve Fretzin, your host, and I'm so thrilled that you're here today. We have a lot to cover. We've got a really unique and interesting show for you today, like most weeks. But yes, this one will be specifically interesting. And I've got a good buddy of mine, Mike, here waiting in the wings. How you doing, Mike?
Doing all right. How are you, Steve?
I have no complaints. I am rocking and rolling here, and business is great. I'm working all over the world, which is really cool. And I'm happy that we get to talk shop today. But as everyone knows that's listened to this podcast before, I'm a big fan of the quote of the show, and I want to talk about that a little bit. And that is, the habit of persistence is the habit of victory. And that's Herbert Kaufman, lovely man. Talk to us about that, and welcome to the show, Mike.
It's really great to be on this, Steve. And, you and I have known each other for a few years, so it's always a pleasure to get a chance to chat with you about stuff that's near and dear to our hearts. So that's sort of a quote that it's one of those quotes where I never really knew where it came from.
Would you look it up?
Let me actually Google it and who said it. But it's frankly, it sort of reflects, I think, a lot of the habits that I took from my dad, who was a insurance agent with State Farm for more than 50 years, self-made guy, no college education, hustled for everything, and was the sort of person that, or taking another quote, right, from Vince Lombardi of perfect practice making perfect, right? Yeah. If you, 90% of what we do, whether it's sales, law, anything else, I think is showing up and being reliable and being dependent and doing the right things the right way repetitively, right? Yeah. And that's whether it's, and that's for people of all walks of life, I think.
But I think, Mike, I'm going to interrupt you right in the middle of your sentence because it's my show and I can do that. No, but there's a word in there that really is so important, and it's the word habit. And to make a habit of persistence, like you could have a habit of good time management or a habit of being on time or whatever it might be, there we all develop good and bad habits. And habit of persistence, how do you think that happened? How do people develop that?
Well, it's sort of the layman's way of looking at it, I think, right? I think most people go back to, if you do something for 21 days in a row, it becomes a habit, right? But I think being diligent about the aspects of your work or your practice that are going to create dividends down the road and making that part of your day-to-day routine so that it's built in and it's not just an add-on at the end of your day. Let's take an easy example and promote Be That Lawyer for a little bit. I think one of the great things that you teach people, right, is that if you make business development and networking and marketing sort of an add-on, right, that, oh, I have to get to this at the end of the day, or, oh, crap, it's Thursday and I haven't sent any emails. It's not going to happen. That you have to build it into part of your routine so that you can do it on a repetitive and consistent and effective basis.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, it's always going to fall to the wayside because we've always got some other project in front of us. And I think the way that my dad always viewed it was there's always another bill you got to pay, right? There's always another app that you could fill out for an insurance policy, right? But sometimes you need to take that time and you need to build it in where you're meeting new people, building relationships, and focusing on those soft skills that don't necessarily pay an immediate dividend, because 10 years down the road, you could be like some of the people I know across the industry at white shoe firms where they go, oh my God, I lost all this time and now I'm a service partner and I'm drowning here. So I think that for me is the key. And so there's different ways to do that. What I've tended to focus on is, I'm lucky to be in Chicago at a great firm of about 100, 115 lawyers that are what I like to call is not quite full service, right? But we do a lot of work across the space. And I really like to do something my dad used to refer to as full circle selling, which is you're not just hiring me, but here's everything else we can bring to the table. Don't just come to me because I'm a trial attorney with 10 years of experience. Don't come to me just because I'm going to get neck deep in your issues. And when you hire me, you hire me. Hire me because I've got this team behind me. I've got great colleagues, et cetera. But if you don't build that into your day-to-day and make that part of your, not just your pitch, but part of who you are as a person and how you present yourself day-to-day, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, to add on, the premise of business development as a habit becomes so ingrained that there are people that do it for long enough, you and I and others, that we don't really have to think about doing it. It's just a part of our day. When I'm not in doing a podcast or meeting with a client, right? What am I doing? Well, I'm doing a bunch of administrative work. Well, no. Am I doing all of my marketing and social media posting that my marketing assistant does? No. So it's like we can build this in not only as a habit, but also I think it becomes enjoyable when you become
Yeah,
good at something,
totally
and
agree.
that's really what persistence and habits can do.
Right, totally agree. Totally agreed
Yeah.
on that.
And so,
Um,
Mike, your partner that you mentioned, Barrick Ferzano, and the thing that you and I talked about pre-show was we both have such an affinity for our dads. Your dad is an insurance professional, and my dad is Larry the lawyer, the late great Larry the lawyer. That we may have some fun talking about our dads and having sort of like a dad show and the quotes that they had and like what we can learn from our fathers that would be useful to people listening today. And so I thought we would start off with one of the quotes that your dad. Oh wait, before we get to that, sorry, man. Give a little background. Give a little background because I want just to make sure everyone knows like exactly who you are, where you're from, and you've covered a little bit. But let's hit it
no,
back.
certainly, certainly. So currently, I'm a trial attorney at Barrick Ferzano here in Chicago, where I'm engaged in all aspects of dispute resolution and strategic counseling in commercial litigation and in tax litigation matters, right? And specifically in tax litigation for disputes against the Internal Revenue Service. And what's nice, I think, about my practice is when you hire a firm like us, right, it's not going to be like a white shoe firm that's getting 10 to 12 guys that are staffed on a case. We're generally very leanly staffed, where my focus is always everyone's got to know the issue, get neck deep in the issues, and everybody on my team has to be rowing in the same direction. And I'm a big believer that if you hire me, you get me, and no one's going to outwork me on my cases, right? That we're all rowing in the same direction for the client relationship. But we're, as I mentioned, we're sort of a not quite full service law firm, and we're based here, but we work nationwide. Most of the time, we're able to do whatever our clients need. But I pride myself on being one of those people that if I can't do it, I make sure it's my mission for anybody, whether they're a paying client today or a prospective client or a friend, to put them in touch with the right person. As I like to say, and this isn't my dad, this is just me. I don't need to be your last call. I want to be your first.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that though because that's what separates, I think, a lawyer from a counselor, a lawyer from a conciliary, someone that is the first call that a client will make when they have a problem. It's,
right.
and let's just lean into that for a moment. My dad, as everyone knows, Larry the lawyer, he was that guy. He was the guy that he didn't have all the answers, but he would find the answers, and he was the one they would confide in and trust at such a level that whether they had, personal emotional problems, whether they need a new job, whatever it was that they needed, they would call Larry first. And I think he became so ingrained in their lives. He was more than just a lawyer handling matters, and that's what I think we want people to realize with business development's a part of that because part of business development not only is how we bring them in, but how we build client loyalty and how we build the relationship and the trust at such a level that they never leave because we are doing the job and more.
I think that's exactly right. Right. And I think you'll certainly run into people that believe that everybody's expendable, right? And to some extent, that's technically true, right? My biggest kind of approach to any client relationship I have or any case that I'm helping another colleague on is I want to make sure that they know that I'm personally invested in their success. Um, you know, Not sugarcoating, give appropriate risk assessments, but also, being that consigliere, to use your word. I always like being compared to Robert Duvall, so I'm going to take
Yeah,
it.
I mean that's great.
Right. No, but I think that's essential because people want to work with people that they respect and admire and like, and people that they feel like get it, right?
Yeah.
Quote unquote, get it. It's not about just the case in front of you. It's not just about the client relationship in front of you. It's making that person's life that much easier, however it might be, regardless of whether or not you can take the work or not.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your father. And there was a quote that you mentioned to me, not even for the show. It was just in talking in our regular
Right.
conversations that he would say, you can't listen to yourself. You can't listen to yourself into trouble. And I wrote
Right.
that down because I was like, that is so good. And I have a comment about that specifically, but I want to hear your take on it.
Right.
What did he kind of mean by that?
Right. Well, my dad was a big believer that besides the fact that he in doing his career at State Farm for over 50 years, he was certainly a sales guy through and through, but he was always very good about the personal touch. And frankly, Steve, I think he invented sales free selling. Uh,
Mm,
I know that's
okay.
your moniker, but I think he invented it
All right.
because his view was always you should be in listening mode when you talk to a client or a potential customer, right?
Yeah.
You need to be identifying what their pressure points are, what's keeping them up at night, And if you come out of the gate just selling yourself, right, you're often going to miss what are they actually concerned about.
Yeah.
And so his big phrase, and it was, I think he learned it from a friend of his that was also in insurance. You can't listen yourself into trouble. Where his view was, if I'm doing my job right, and I've demonstrated to you that I'm competent, I will make myself available. I'm there whenever you need me. And if I'm not the right guy, I'll get you in touch with the right person. Good things are going to happen, right? So putting yourself in that position to be an active listener and a participant in your client's story in whatever your
Yeah.
client is dealing with.
Well,
Go ahead.
listen, sales free selling wasn't invented out of thin air. I mean, I had to study, right? I had to study your dad and everyone like your dad to take the concepts of what sales should be and what sales was. You know, it was the sizzle of the steak. It was convincing people. It was pitching. It was talking. It was, how flashy can I be? And we have to flip it on its end and say, look, we can't do that anymore because it doesn't feel right for anybody. And
No.
on the other side of it, how much more are we going to learn and understand and empathize when we ask questions versus when we talk? And the other
Exactly.
thing that I want to spin and then I want to get back to you is my take on this was also it's very hard for people to raise objections when you're not talking, which is very similar. I mean, like stolen
Yes,
right
it
from your
is.
dad, basically. Anyway,
No, you kind of, I won't say, my father passed about 5 years ago. And after that, I'm going to turn to the picture behind me. After he passed, my mom had found in the basement a bunch of pamphlets that when he was at Allstate that they'd put together because he was one of their premier salesmen before he had started his own agency with State Farm. And she sort of passed it out at his wake, but he was always known as being a very business-oriented, business-minded person. So people kind of got a chuckle out of it. It's obviously not something you typically see at a wake. But anyway, my wife had it framed for me, and he's got a line in here right at the end. It's like a magazine that Allstate used to publish, and they had a full article on him in it back in the 60s, where he talks about, I seek that yes as soon as possible. When I walk in the door and my prospect wants to hang up my coat, I say, it's okay if I leave it here, isn't it? He says, yeah, sure. If he wants to sit in the kitchen, I say, how about the dining room? It's hard for a prospect to tell a stranger no, especially after he's invited the stranger into his home. I may further ask him, would you please get me a glass of water? He says, sure. By the time I get to my presentation, the man has said yes, or at least agreed with me 3-4 times.
yeah,
The point being, you want to put people in a position where they're A, comfortable, and B, are already in the mode of wanting to talk to you.
yeah,
And he doesn't have to do a whole lot more than that.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, he taught me this all the time. He also did house calls well into his 70s. He died at 86 and basically worked until he became ill. But he was still doing house visits for clients as far south as on the south side. He had an office in Park Ridge, but he'd go all the way down to almost Calumet City in Indiana. He had clients all the way up in Rockford, and he was still doing house calls, taking pictures for the home insurance policies, and would take that time to meet with people. And he talks about a presentation in here, but by the time I knew him in the 90s and 2000s, my dad was a little bit older. He had had a previous marriage and had a couple other kids. And so I was in a later marriage. But by the time I knew him, he didn't really have a presentation. What he was selling was himself, his personality, his mentality, his mindset, his drive. He wasn't pitching people on, oh, I've got a better rate on, this app as opposed to Allstate, or, oh, you can bundle, right? Like, it's not like, Flow for Progressive. He didn't have to
right.
do that, right? What he's selling you is confidence, competence, know-how, and enthusiasm. And so I try to take that away in terms of what I'm doing for my relationships and my clients. But I think it's exactly right, Steve, is that if you're doing your job right, you don't actually really have to pitch anything.
Yeah. And the thing that I'm continually trying to reinforce in the clients that I work with is it isn't about the power of your presentation. It's really about the ability to ask great questions and continue to take someone down a rabbit hole. That's their own rabbit hole. They created it with their legal
Right.
problem or with their lack of business development acumen or whatever it is. I'm just asking, and I don't know if this is Oprah or Howard Stern or whomever does it, great interviews, 60 minutes, but
Right.
they don't just ask a question and solve, or ask a question and listen and then ask another question. Ask a question and then, after they respond, ask another question, take it deeper and deeper and deeper. That's where the truth is. And that's where the business is. People just don't realize that it's 2 or 3 layers underneath where they may start with their problem.
Right.
The problem is, my partner's screwing me and I need to sue him. Okay. So that we think that, okay, we hear sue him, let's talk about how we sue people. And that's not where the business is. It's how many beneath that and how much is going on beneath that that connects us as humans and as someone that has belief that there's a solution because you're the one asking and listening.
I think that's exactly right. And I think to even broaden that beyond sales, right? It's not just about getting the sale. It's also, if you're listening, you can actually help whoever it is solve the
Yeah.
problem, right? In my case, this was a great example. A couple of weeks ago, I have a potential client that I've known for a while, independent business owner, great person, has been immensely frustrated with their litigation counsel and other matter. And we were talking a little bit about the litigation matter, but what actually popped up was totally unrelated, where they were also venting about a trademark issue they were having, where they felt like their previous lawyer had screwed up the registrations, and they would have to get a new trademark, and it was a whole mess. And I said, well, actually, our firm is premier in that, right? It's one of the main IP services we provide. But if I had just been recommending her what she should do about the litigation, I never would have heard about that. But putting that person in that mode of thinking about all the frustrations they have, all the concerns they have, you can find opportunities to help them, right? And that would be a matter, if that were to come in, I wouldn't even work on it. I'm not a big believer in, working a file just to prove that I laid eyes on it. I often tell my clients that, hey, I've got people that are really competent here. It's a great firm. If I'm not the guy, someone else here can probably do it.
Yeah.
And that way I'm solutions oriented. It doesn't necessarily show up on my balance sheet, but they'll come back.
Yeah. So let's get one more in before we go to the next subject of something that your father gave to you as a gift in the business development sales realm that really has inspired you to take things to the next level. Because you're not someone who wants to just bill an unlimited number of hours every single year. You want and have a drive and a desire to grow business.
Do we include his sandwich that I took out of his bag?
I know that sandwich very much, very well. And the things that we steal from our parents, that's a different show.
That's a different show. That's a different show. No, I think I grew up very differently in a lot of ways than my dad did. I was I was fortunate to have really great experiences at great institutions and learned a lot from people that are way smarter than I'm ever going to be. My dad was a self-made guy. No college degree, played minor league baseball for a couple of years, worked for the Bell Company for a while, sold copper, then was a beat cop. His famous story is that he pulled over Joe DiMaggio after a game where Joe DiMaggio was way too drunk to get
Oh
home.
my God.
But anyway, that's a whole other show too. But anyway, he's the kind of person that by virtue of his experience, he had met a lot of people and he knew a lot. He had a lot of very close friends at very wide spectrums in terms of age, background, income, education. He could talk to anybody. And a lot of his friends would come over on a regular basis to the house. And, since I was, this high, I'll take it off camera, like that high. I was exposed to a lot of really interesting people from a lot of different walks of life where, it doesn't really matter where you come from. I've got a good shot that I'm going to be able to empathize with you or at minimum sympathize and figure out a workable solution. My dad was always very good about no matter where you came from, he was going to try to become your best friend.
Yeah.
And not because there was necessarily a motivation about it, but that's just sort of the personality that he was. He loved being around people. And I think it's made my practice that much more effective. Where, I got a great compliment from a client last week that said, you're my kind of litigator. You're always upbeat. You're always engaged. And put another way, they said, you always give a shit.
Well, I want to cut back in though. The thing that you said about your dad sort of making friends is in line with a quote I wrote down before we even started this podcast from my dad, which was, he said, if you can't make a sale, make a friend. First of all, let's just acknowledge that my dad said the word sale, right? That he knew that this was sales, right? Like that getting business. He didn't have to do much of it because he was so great at what he did and things just came his way. But the fact that he kind of picked that up and said that to me on multiple occasions, I think is right in line with your dad in the sense of not everybody's going to do business with you. It doesn't mean you can't have a friend. It doesn't mean that they won't refer you or think of you down the road.
Right. But and I think it's true. And you and I were talking about this a little bit. I think your dad was very similar to mine in this, that A, the worst thing that anybody can say is no, but B, the overwhelming majority of people, if you frame it the right way and help them help you, want to help you.
Yeah.
Right. No one really, no one gets excited. Well, there's some evil people out there, but I think most people are not in the business of trying to see how they can make other people miserable and deny people help and deny people opportunities. And so, you always talk about, right, the second best answer is no, right? But, I think more broadly, that's, I think people are always in the mood of trying to help each other, even if it's not going to be them that's providing the help. But putting yourself out there, I'm not a big believer in sort of my dad was a big believer in The Secret. I don't know if you'd ever heard of that or the
Yeah,
other
I do like that, and I think there was a Oprah promoted the video or whatever it was, or produced it, something like that.
Right, right. Now I was sort of a know-it-all when I was a teenager and I would sort of poo-poo it, but I think there's truth in if you're putting yourself out there repeatedly as that kind of person and that kind of personality, yes, good things will happen to you because people want to work with people and collaborate with people that they respect and like. So in that sense, my dad had it spot on, and frankly, is a lesson I wish I'd really kind of internalized sooner. Sort of as a teenager, know-it-all kid who went off to Yale, I sort of thought I had all the answers. Fun fact, I wish I could go back in time and slap that guy around. He didn't. But my dad was, my dad had a lot of really great wisdom about how to deal with people, which now I feel like has really paid off for me in spades, has really made my practice a joy, has really made it fun to work with my colleagues and the client base that we serve. It's really been incredible. And I owe a lot of that to him in terms of the attitude, mindset, and being able to get out there and put yourself out there in the best light possible.
Well, let's give a shout out to our pops and our dads and all that. And if
Absolutely.
as you guys are listening, you know, be appreciative. We all, we didn't all have great childhoods. We didn't have all great parents. But if you did, and there was something that you could learn from them and bring to your kids or to bring to your life, take a moment and really think about that and be appreciative because there are some people without parents or whatever it might be.
Right.
Let's change subjects a little bit. So there's a question I want to ask you about going from associate to partner, and what are some of the best decisions that you made? Because I know there are associates listening that want to make partner, they want to, develop and build a book of business that helped you build your own practice as a partner. What are some things that you'd share?
Start building relationships early.
Yeah.
That's not to say go look for business as a first-year associate, right? Because I was there, right? I started at Mayer Brown in their tax controversy practice. And the main reason I'd gone there is I really wanted trial experience. And they had a few cases that were in line to go. And I was able to get on one or two of those. Fantastic experience, right? But let's not kid ourselves, right? If you're starting at a big firm like that in particular, right, you are not really expected, nor can you really bring in a case. I mean, you can get lucky, right? But most people don't have that. So what you should be doing is investing in your relationships. And that can look totally different to different people, right? So my approach was I joined the University Club of Chicago after I graduated when, they're like, hey, there's no downstroke, come on in. We'll put you on the junior membership rate. And they've got a lot of really great professionals that are now some of my closest friends. My wife and I, at our wedding, we had 3 tables worth of University Club people, and they're still not just my closest friends, but still my best referral sources today, right? But I think you need to find whatever that network or community or relationship building opportunity it's going to be that you can make part of your day-to-day, make it a habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not, oh, I have to go do this. And I'm not going to do I get to do this. No, it's just you build it into your day. So for me, for example, I'm downtown 4 to 5 days a week still, and I make it my business to make sure I go to the gym in the morning, have a half hour I can just chat with people, learn what they do, how they tick, what they care about, and then I'll come to work. And then if I've got time after work, I'll go over to the University Club, grab a drink or a coffee, whoever's there, and just chat.
Yeah.
But if I didn't build that in my day-to-day, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And so I think that's also true for young attorneys is if you don't build in that time, you're never going to make time because you'll always say, oh, I don't have it. Well, no, it's just you haven't made it, you haven't built it in. But I think the right people will internalize that. A good example is a close friend of mine who's also an attorney and I were getting coffee. And, he mentioned, I just don't know, where to even begin. And I said, well, write down the names of 25 people that are your friends. It doesn't matter if they're attorneys, right? If they're working professionals and they're downtown, or you feel comfortable enough to give them a call and say, hey, I'm trying to build this out. I'd like an introduction. That's an easy place to start. That's your network. That doesn't require a country club membership. That doesn't require private club membership. That doesn't require that you go join the associate board of an organization. That's just working with the people you have. But even if you start there, I mean, I started, I kind of reworked my list about 2, 3 months ago. And I started, okay, start with 25, 30 people. That list is now 120, and it's been 2 months since I kind of reorganized my list.
Yeah.
And it's already paying dividends. But I think if you start that earlier, you'll be better off by the time that you're up for partner, because then you're able to signal to people, I can do this. Just give me the breathing space.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was playing golf yesterday with a guy who I caddied back when I was in college and everything in the summers, and he did the same. And he ended up getting his lifetime job because a member that he caddied for said, "Hey, who was that kid who caddied? He was really great." Brought him into the organization. He worked his way up, etc. And I thought, man, I was kicking myself. I'm like, I was at one of the most exclusive private clubs in the country in college, and I couldn't tell you one person that I met the whole time because it wasn't even a blip in my mind. I was like, how soon can I get out of here after drop off these 2 heavy bags? So it just didn't occur to me, and I
Right.
was just, and it didn't occur to him either. By the way, he just got picked out. But I'm just to reinforce what you're saying: college, law school, friends, family, neighbors, church, temple, whatever it is that you're doing. Think about the people that you like. Think about the people that are connected and make
Right.
sure that you're meeting with them and talking with them because they will help you and it will lead to business.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's sort of the obvious, you never know. But I'm a big believer that if you put yourself in the right position, right? I think the way that your dad and my dad did, right? If you put yourself in the right position and keep putting yourself out there, and to the point that you reemphasized earlier, making it a habit,
Hmm.
it doesn't really matter what the environment is, as long as you are putting together, whether, I don't like to call it a roster, right? But if you're building a community around you, right, and you're focusing your energy in the right way, it can happen. It doesn't, it's sort of, yeah, I took the private university club route, and then, family, friends, and other guys at law firms, right?
Right.
That doesn't necessarily have to be the same pattern for everybody, right? And
Yeah.
frankly, I don't think that's necessary, right?
Yeah.
It depends upon who you know coming in. It depends upon who you've bumped into, but over time, right, you'll be surprised where some comes from. Even
Yeah.
yesterday, I went to the Bear game. Finally, we have an offense. How about it?
Yeah. How about that? Who'd have thought?
But I went to the Bear game, and I always do kind of a tailgate spread, and I had family that came in town. And I'm passing out food to people coming by because I always know my family doesn't eat everything I cook, right? Not because it's not good. I think my cooking's great, but I cook way too much. So I'm passing it out. One person came over from 3 lots over who saw me and came by and said, "Hey, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm an attorney." And I, talked about it. And she said, "Oh, well, I represent, so and so. I'd love to get your card. Let's talk Monday."
Holy mackerel. Tailgate,
Right?
tailgate win. You won the
Right.
game in the tailgate.
Right. But for putting yourself in the right place at the right time and putting yourself out there, that was never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now that's sort of a weird example, but I think it's true, right? If you do enough of that, it's sort of just statistically in the same way. It's the same method that dating apps work too, for everybody out there on dating apps. It's a
I
numbers
didn't think
game.
we'd be going down this path, but okay.
No, but it's true, right? It's
I
just,
know.
in some sense, it is a numbers game about if you keep putting yourself out there, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Now, don't tell my wife this. She says she hates the algorithm on the app we met on, but that's a whole.
There we go. Hey, last thing as we wrap up though, I know you've been very complimentary to, working with me in the program. Anything you want to share with people about, yes, there's a lot you can do on your own, but maybe the value, whether it's me or anybody, just the value
Yeah.
of coaching.
No. I think it's really important, and not just because it's your podcast, Steve.
No.
Uh, no, I think, I'll put it this way: when I signed up for your program a few years ago, I was sort of convinced that, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'd really like kind of the fine pointers and a different perspective and tweaking. And it turned out to be a lot more than that. I mean, there were some intuitions and insights that you had in how you framed, how you framed a lot of the kind of nuts and bolts of making meetings as effective as possible. How to do effective outreach by email or whatever method you're going to use, how to make your social media presence that much more effective. That I thought, oh, that makes sense, but I never thought about it that way. And that to me is a tremendous value add. And, as I tell people all the time, and I'm a shameless promoter of Steve Fretzin. I think Steve Fretzin's the best.
Ah, wow.
Um,
I'm gonna have you back.
yeah, right. Why not? No, but I really loved your program. And to me, it's, you bring, from my perspective, I thought, okay, I bring in one case and I really stick to what Steve's taught and I internalize it. I'm not going to miss it. Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great investment just for that one case. And, as I've applied it over the last few years, I found a lot of things that I think I could have probably done naturally start turning the corner that much faster because I'm more systematic than I otherwise would have been.
Yeah. And it's certainly
So
not that, it's certainly not that no one's figured out business development before me. It's absolutely not that. We all know rainmakers, right? We all know people that have done it. It's just how much faster can we do it and with less, painful, pain along the way, if you will.
right, right. Now, and to me, I think the best takeaways I had from your program were how to make the networking and business development related tasks I'm building into my day-to-day that much more effective, that much more systematic, and frankly, more persuasive and effective.
Yeah.
And to me, what's great about it too is it doesn't matter what stage in the process you are, right? You could feel you're a rock star. And Steve, you know this better than I do, right? You've got attorneys coming to you that already have a healthy book.
Yeah.
And they find it tremendously valuable. I've talked to them since. So
Yeah.
that's the best plug I can give.
Well, listen, appreciate that, the commentary. And again, I think the other thing that we need to just mention is you have to have I'm the coach, you're the player, and the player played, right? The player's playing and has played. And so I can only demonstrate expertise in someone that's going to execute on what they're learning. And you did that in spades, my friend. I appreciate that. Wrapping up with your favorite podcast, which I already feel like I know what it is. I've never heard it before, but this sounds pretty interesting. The Par Train.
The Par Train, yes, yes. Shameless plug for a good friend of mine from the University Club who's got a really great podcast with a friend of his. They essentially, the content's about kind of, how do I put this? They do a really good job, I think, of helping people kind of, I don't want to say dumb down the game, but kind of get out of your own head and go back to enjoying the game.
And we're talking about golf for those who don't know what par is.
It's a golf-focused podcast for the average player who is trying to get better, trying to have more fun, and frankly, kind of get out of their own headspace and go back to sort of enjoying the game. And I found it really helpful the last couple of years too. I've been playing a little bit more, in between work, but I'm a fairly internally competitive person, but I've had a lot of great takeaways from that podcast about, focusing kind of what's in front of you and enjoying the moment and not getting ahead of yourself. Or as I like to sometimes put it, don't look at the mountain, look at the path in front of you and just take it step by step. And frankly, I found it's been really helpful for me outside of golf.
But a lot of sports can leak into our careers.
It absolutely can. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that podcast. And they actually are good golfers, so it's not like high handicappers doing this.
Yeah,
I can't get on.
I thought about writing a book called "How to Be a Bogey Golfer in 3 Easy Steps." Coming soon to a bookstore near you.
It's funny you mentioned that. I tried to pitch the Par Train on, hey, if you want to have a podcast focused on high handicap golfers that are lawyers.
Yeah, let's do that, right?
Right, exactly.
Nice.
My big pitch is, I'm a good attorney because my handicap is not very low.
Right. It's the handicaps that are under 5 or 7 that you got to worry. Are they really practicing the law?
Exactly right.
Hey, listen, we got to wrap up, Mike, but I want to thank you for being on the show. I also want to thank our wonderful sponsors, rankings.io. Check them out if you're looking for more leads for your business in the plaintiff personal injury space. And of course, I want to talk about the Rainmaker Roundtable. If you are a successful rainmaker and you're listening, or you know someone who is, and they want to be in a room with other successful rainmakers, let's get them involved. I'm doing free audits, so somebody can come and just be a fly on the wall or engage as much as you like with my rainmakers and see how it feels. Sort of, put on the suit and see, roll around a little bit in it and see what it feels like. But just email me at steve@fretzin.com for that. Mike, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to network with you, they loved what you said today, which I'm sure they did, what are the best ways for them to reach you?
Best way to reach me is probably on LinkedIn. As I like to tell people know me on a last name basis. When you've got a last name like Educate, you might as well use it. So you can find me, Michael Educate, on LinkedIn, or I'm also at Barrick Ferrazzano in Chicago, and our website's bfkn.com. I should pop up right away. There aren't many Educates in the practice of law.
My teacher wife loved you before, and she hasn't met you yet. But if she does, you're already ahead of the game with the last name Educate. So, she's a big fan from afar.
Know what? She sounds like a great person. Let's get her over.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Well, you're hopefully coming out to the burbs at some point.
Don't twist my arm.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for spending some time on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are here rocking and rolling every single week, twice a week for you, the lawyer, to live your best lawyer's life. Be that lawyer, everybody. Confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, be safe, be well, and we will talk again soon.